Chapter 1, Section 4, Learning Target 3 is about constructing velocity time graphs. To make a velocity time graph, you need to know about the motion of an object. According to this position time graph, the object is moving away from the origin at a medium constant velocity. Since the direction is positive, we would put the line for the velocity time graph in the positive part of the graph. Since it's moving at a medium constant velocity, we would put that line about in the middle of the velocity time graph. And it would be a horizontal line because it is a constant velocity. Now, if we wanted to find the actual velocity of the object and graph that, we would need to have numbers on our graph. But let's just say that we take 2 points on this graph. Let's say that we have numbers. We do rise over run, and we find out that the slope, which is the velocity, is 5 meters per second. Then when we graph that velocity on the velocity time graph, we would go to the point at 5 meters per second, and we would graph that. In this situation, for the position time graph, we have an object that's moving toward the origin at a medium constant velocity. Since this object is moving toward the origin, the slope is negative, and therefore, when we graph this motion on a velocity time graph, we would need to put it into the negative part of the graph. The negative part of the graph is the area of a velocity time graph that is below the zero. Positive is the area above the zero. Since this object is moving with a medium constant velocity, we would go about halfway down and draw that horizontal line. When you're making velocity time graphs, it is important to remember that the positive part of the graph means the object is moving away from the origin in the positive direction, and the negative part of the graph means the object is moving toward the origin. That's the negative direction. So when you're graphing the velocity, you need to put it either in the away or the toward area of the graph, depending on the direction it's moving. Now we have an object that is moving away from the origin but speeding up. It is not moving at a constant velocity. The way that we show that an object is speeding up on a velocity time graph is to make a diagonal line. In this case, because the object is moving away from the origin, it's in the positive direction, we would make that diagonal line in the positive part of the graph. If an object was slowing down, moving away from the origin, the position time graph would look like this. Here we see that the line is steeper at the beginning, less steep at the end, so the object is slowing down. If an object was speeding up but moving toward the origin, the line would look like this. Again, the line is steeper at the end, showing that it's speeding up at the end. And finally, if an object is slowing down but moving toward the origin, it would have a shape like that. So you can see all of these curved lines show different types of motion. They can all be graphed according to their velocity on a velocity time graph. An object that is slowing down but in the positive direction would have a line that looks like that. An object that is speeding up but in the negative direction would have a line that looks like that. And an object that is slowing down in the negative direction would have a line that looks like that. So if you look at the color coding, each specific type of motion has a specific type of line, both on the position time graph and the velocity time graph. And here's a summary of the velocity time graph information. In this case, an object has a positive velocity with zero acceleration, meaning the object's moving at a constant velocity in the positive direction. In this case, the object has a positive velocity and a positive acceleration. The object is moving in the positive direction, but speeding up. at the bottom, these objects are moving with a positive velocity. These objects have a negative velocity. The positive and the negative makes a difference. It's very important that we understand why the lines are in the places they are on a velocity time graph. In this one, the object's moving in a positive direction, speeding up. In this one, the object's moving in a positive direction, but slowing down. We know because the velocity measurement is getting closer and closer to zero. In this graph, the object again is slowing down. The velocity is getting closer and closer to zero, but it's in the negative direction, meaning toward the origin. And this graph shows an object that is speeding up in the negative direction, or toward the origin. So the velocity is increasing, but in the negative direction. Now take a moment to check your understanding. You're going to be using this graph as a reference, and you're going to choose the items here that describe the motion shown in that graph. Write down your answers in your notebooks and press pause on this tutorial while you work on that. So what did you discover? Is the object moving in a positive direction? How would we know? Well, according to the graph, the line is in the positive part of the graph. So the object is moving in the positive direction. Is the object moving with a constant velocity? We see here that there is a diagonal line on a velocity time graph. So the object is not moving at a constant velocity. The velocity is changing. Is the object moving with a negative velocity? Well, as we can see, the line is in the positive part of the graph. So therefore it's moving with a positive velocity, not a negative velocity. Is the object slowing down? We can see that the object starts with a certain amount of velocity and that velocity ends up at zero. Therefore the object is slowing down. Is this object changing directions? We can see from this graph that the line is in the positive part of the graph the whole time. Therefore, it means that it's staying in the positive direction. So it is not changing directions. Is the object speeding up? Well, since we said it was slowing down already, then it obviously is not speeding up. Is it moving with a positive acceleration? In order to answer that, we need to look at the slope of the velocity time graph. The slope tells you the acceleration, just like the slope of a position time graph tells you the velocity. So since the slope of that line is negative, then it does not move with a positive acceleration. In this case, this object has a negative acceleration. And finally, is this object moving with a constant acceleration? Is this line a straight line? And the answer is yes, it is. So this object is moving with a constant acceleration. The slope of this line is constant because that line is a straight line. And in fact, all of the objects that we are going to be looking at in this unit, all of them will have a constant acceleration. Now you can do some more practice. Go to this website, physicsclassroom.com, and you're going to be doing some practice with an activity called Graph That Motion. Go to this link, practice the graphing, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much.